urbanization, and now digital acceleration have transformed these spaces and the meanings of childhood. So today's children live in worlds of technological abundance, yet they often experience an emotional fragmentation. They have more access, but perhaps less belonging. And in this context, I think the work that Anthropos India Foundation is doing is an excellent work to not only produce knowledge and document the knowledge, but also disseminate the same to the people to bring awareness in the world and to be sensitive to the childhood that is very important, who are the future of the world. So we are living in a world, it is our responsibility that we also respond to the challenges and make and facilitate the process of undergoing the childhood. And therefore, I only may want to make use of this opportunity to congratulate Anthropos India Foundation. And I am sure that anthropology has a lot many to learn from children and in the study of childhood. I am sure this particular magazine will bring out our closeness and connectivity, and it will be able to bring a networking among those who work among children, and it will bring a new awareness to the anthropologists in general. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Dr. Sunita Reddy, and once again I congratulate, and I was happy to release this magazine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Gregory, for releasing the magazine. We'll be sharing the magazine link in the chat box little later. I would request Sukanya to introduce our guest speaker today and start this session. Over to you, Sukanya.
Yes, ma'am. So, good evening, everyone. I am Sukanya, an intern of this foundation, Anthropos India Foundation. So, a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined in this evening for this special lecture. So, this special lecture is entitled "Measuring a Livelihood Within a Sustainable Paradigm: A Micro-level Analysis of Rural Households" by Professor S. Gregory. Before I start, I would like to take a moment to introduce our foundation, Anthropos India Foundation. Our founder, ma'am, is Dr. Sunita Reddy. She founded in 2011. This foundation promotes the discipline of anthropology, its philosophy, and its methods to engage in applied and action research. How work seeks to address the issues of local community through bottom-up approach using their cultures and people. We conduct community-based research rooted in local knowledge system, local culture, ecology to inform policy advice and drive transformation impact. Uh, the foundation also conducts workshops, trainings, and advocacy on various issues, especially on children's. This foundation promotes visual anthropology through vibrant, authenticate, and meaningful ethnographic films, photo documentation, and others words also. We publish a quarterly multilingual digital magazine, which we already mentioned, Childhood Matters, and also a monthly magazine and bulletin, along with our own publishing house called Anthropos Book. Our founder member, Dr. Surita Reddy, is an associate professor at the Center of Social Medicine and Community Health at the NU. I would like to take a moment to formally introduce our guest uh, uh, speaker for this special lecture, Professor S. Gregory. Professor Gregory is a renowned anthropologist and former dean, Faculty of Sciences and Chairperson, Department of Anthropology at Kannur University. He holds M.A. M.Phil from Poona and Madras University and a Ph.D. degree from ISEC Bangalore under Mysore University. He served as a director of School of Distance Education, and held additional charge as director, HRDC at Kannur University, a recipient of Fulbright-Nehru Nehru visiting lecturers at several US institutions, including GWU, Boston University, and Rutgers. He organized a panel at 17th IUAES World Congress and led to 10th INCAA Congress in 2013. Uh, with over the 60 publication, 5 books, his work focuses on sustainable development, participatory research, decentralized planning, uh, and many more. Professor Gregory continues to influence the discipline through teaching, research, and academic leadership. So I invite Professor Gregory formally for his lectures and ask Saba for any technical help and presentation.
Thank you, Sukanya. Sir, over to you, sir. Sir, please unmute.
I mean, there was some internet problem. 1 minute, I'll just get in and get
Right.
back to you.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Is it visible? Is my slide visible?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. So
Would
very
you like
good
to
evening
make
to
it
all.
full screen, sir?
Well, okay.
Is it full screen? Yeah.
I think it's full screen.
Okay, please go ahead.
Good evening to all. I'm very happy to be here to deliver this particular lecture on measuring livelihoods within a sustainable paradigm, a micro-level analysis of rural households. I must thank the Anthropos India Foundation for giving me this opportunity to share with you some of my ideas about livelihoods, the efforts to develop an index to measure the livelihoods within a sustainable paradigm. Just as an introduction, in the long journey of human race, as we know, lasting almost 1 million years, the human beings have creating multiple and diversified ways of life in the process of their continuous interaction with the natural resources and ecological setting. While this interaction had been symbiotically sustained for a major span of time in human history, the last few centuries, which constitute only a fraction in the long history of humankind, have severely affected this symbiosis to the extent of even threatening the very human existence itself. So this has resulted in keeping a majority of humanity at the level of vulnerable existence. Only in this context that the terms like sustainable development and sustainable livelihoods have assumed increasing significance and relevance. The concept sustainable livelihood is said to be increasingly used today, mainly in the context of anti-poverty strategies, sustainable development efforts, and participation and empowerment processes. It has also been evolved as an approach with special emphasis on rural development and in tackling the issues of livelihood security. In a broader sense, a livelihood comprises the capabilities, activities, assets, and entitlements by which people make a living. In operational terms, a livelihood should be sufficient to avoid poverty and preferably increase well-being for a typical worker plus dependents. It implies systems of how rural people make a living and whether their livelihoods are secure or vulnerable over time. Livelihoods are also seen as the ways in which people satisfy their needs or gain a living. The concept sustainability is closely associated to the livelihood system as it focuses on how the resources and assets are utilized through appropriate strategies to meet the livelihood needs and aspirations in the long-term and short-term basis. Sustainability has also emerged as one of the main criteria by which development is defined and evaluated. As the concept implies the ability to sustain, it necessarily encompasses a long-range concern for future and the process of generating self-sustaining improvements in human capability and well-being. A livelihood is sustainable if it can cope with, recover from, and adapt to stresses and shocks, maintain or enhance its capabilities and assets, enhance opportunities for the next generation, and provide net benefits to other livelihoods locally and more widely, both now and in the future, without undermining the natural resource base, as Carswell points out.
So the slides are not moving, sir?
No, I'll come back to the slides.
Okay, so sorry, sir.
The sustainable livelihood is concerned with the capacity of the people in making a living by surviving the shocks and stresses and improving their material conditions without disturbing the sustainability of the livelihood options of others, either now or in the future. The sustainable livelihood approach emerges as an alternative to the current unsustainable patterns of production and consumption, both in the developing and in the developed worlds. A household may be enabled to gain sustainable livelihood security in many ways, through ownership of land, livestock, rights to grazing, fishing, through stable employment with adequate remuneration, or through varied repertoire of activities. A common universal priority of poor is a desire for adequate, secure, decent livelihoods that provides for physical and social well-being. In this sense, it is possible to conceive the livelihood system as being located at a certain point on a continuum. So I conceive this as a continuum in which the sustainable livelihood is located at a certain point on a continuum, with the conditions of vulnerability on the one extreme and overconsumption on the other extreme, with the sustainable livelihoods in the middle. As we all know, in the 1990s, the Human Development Index, a composite index measuring health, education, and economic dimensions of human development in terms of long and healthy life, knowledge, and a decent standard of living, is one such approach evolved and implemented since the 90s by the United Nations Development Programme to capture the levels of human development among the members of the United Nations. In India, the National Human Development Report uses indicators that capture the development and well-being of the people from two perspectives, namely the conglomerative perspective, which takes into account the advances made by the society as a whole, and the deprivational perspective, which assesses the status of the deprived and the extent of deprivation in society. While Paulo Freire considers liberation as development, for Amartya Sen, it is freedom which is development. In his book, Development as Freedom, Amartya Sen explains how, in a world of unprecedented increase in overall opulence, millions of people living in the third world are still unfree. All such understandings of development have been the result of differential thinking beyond economic rationality. Today, the national governments are committed to the attainment of the sustainable development goals, with a major part of its success remaining with India, being a home to about 1/6 of the world's population and having almost 1/3 of world's rural poor. In India, the 1990s have seen a turning point in the functioning of democracy, with the measures initiated towards strengthening the local democracy through Panchayati Raj system. Kerala is known for its high quality of life in terms of adult literacy rate, infant mortality rate, and life expectancy and sex ratio. Nations resulted in the world-acclaimed Kerala model of development, earning a unique place in the development thinking, though it had to face a crisis of sorts, mainly in terms of its sustainability. It was at this point that there was a turning point in the history of India's democratic efforts, with the passing of the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments, with the objective to strengthen the decentralized governance at the local level. Here again, Kerala had grasped the opportunity to be in the forefront in making the decentralization process to be a people's planning, thereby earning accolades from world over and from the Government of India for its effective implementation of the Panchayati Raj system. It is in this context that a study focusing on the ground level realities and developing appropriate parameters to assess the levels of livelihood at the levels of the local self-government assumed relevance and significance. Now, this present discourse is based on a micro-level study undertaken with the support of Kerala Institute of Local Administration, focused a sample of 100 households within a particular ward, the lowest unit at the third tier of the Panchayati Raj system in the Dharmadam village Panchayat of Kannur district, Kerala. Looking at development from an integrated perspective, in an earlier study, I have advocated a 6-fold livelihood empowerment framework involving eco-physical, that is, access to control over land, water, housing, roads, you can see this, the framework that I have developed. So eco-physical with regard to access to control over land, water, housing, roads, markets, and other amenities. Economic, including the choices and capabilities concerning production, employment, savings, credit. Biophysical, access to food, nutrition, and health. And social, involvement and participation in family, community, neighborhood, Gram Sabha, Kudumbashree, etc. Cultural, having access to education, arts, sports, and entertainment. and political, the extent of participation in power sharing, decision making, and leadership. These dimensions to identify appropriate and operational indicators of the differential levels of livelihood at each of these dimensions separately and compositely. Of these six-fold dimensions, the first three dimensions, which reflect the livelihood paradigm more than the empowerment paradigm, has been taken for this present analysis. I have used what is called BCOP's levels of livelihood, which I have developed in the earlier study. This provides these 5 levels of livelihood category: bare minimal level, core subsistence level, optimal sustainable level, perilous sustainable level, and severe sustainable level. And each of these levels having a different levels of livelihood security, like bare minimal level having extremely vulnerable and deprived households, which means that their basic survival is being threatened, where there is an urgent intervention required to alleviate the condition. The second level is core subsistence level, which is moderately insecure households, and which means marginally they are sustaining with limited resilience. And comes at the center the optimal sustainable level, which implies secure and stable households, meaning thereby balanced and desirable livelihood condition. The fourth category is the perilous sustainable level, which are overstressed households, where sustainability is threatened by resource overuse and instability. And the last one is severe sustainable level, implying highly unsustainable households, which are ecologically and socially unsustainable, and which calls for correction. So this is a new paradigm of thinking about livelihood security, where development does not mean that we are going higher and higher and higher, but we have to strike a balance and come back to the center where we achieve the optimal sustainable level. So we need to elevate those who are at the bare minimum level to the higher level, and those who are at the severe sustainable level to come back to the optimal sustainable level. So this provides a complete paradigm where we could locate the households where a particular household is actually located in this in the continuum of these 5 paradigms, 5 categories. So these BCOPs, I say bare survival, core subsistence, optimal sustainable, perilous sustainable, severe suicidal sustainable, levels of livelihood security, I call BCOPs, developed in the earlier study, portraying 5 levels of livelihood. Now, livelihood security measurement and index. Livelihood security is an integral part of sustainable development and strongly manifested at the eco-physical, economic, and biophysical dimensions. It is important to understand the differential levels of livelihood security across different sections of society in order to make strategic interventions to ensure a desirable and a balanced livelihood security across society. As said earlier, for the purpose of the present study, the intra-livelihood assessment approach was adopted to understand the extent of deviations from and deprivations of livelihood options and the gaps from within. The B Corp's framework has been used for identifying the different livelihood conditions at appropriate levels, keeping the optimal condition as the center. This could be either the average standard of the subjected population or the desirable standard in a given context at whichever level one talks of. It could be done at the macro level, even on a global standard, and then using the same as a standard indicator for determining the deviations on either side of the optimal indicator, which could go even far beyond the tolerant limit of lower levels on either side. But to determine the desirable standard, which may vary across different levels, one needs to take into consideration the carrying capacity, the footprint index, etc. The macro standard index, in whichever way it is done, would serve, in fact, as an absolute index, and which could be useful to understand relatively the micro level deviations from the macro level standard optimal index, whether it be at the global or at the national or at the state or regional or at the local levels. The micro level livelihood realities could be understood with reference to a standard optimal index that could at any of the higher levels. The present analysis has been undertaken with reference to the local level optimal index, evolved on the basis of the household data in each of the three dimensions separately as well as compositely. Even at the local level, developing a standard index is possible within the geographical or administrative boundaries, or within the social, occupational, or any other boundaries within the farmer. The same is possible at every macro level too. The approach adapted for understanding the deviations of the individual household from the average livelihood security of the social unit was by determining the optimal position as 100 within a continuum with bare survival and suicidal sustainable levels on the extremes. This 100 would be the percent per capita average of the given unit. In this continuum, the lowest bare survival level would be those that fall below a weightage of 40. If you look at this table, it is, I have given the index range 1 to 2, 3 to 4 core subsistence level, 5 to 6 optimal sustainable level, and 7 to 8 perilous sustainable level, and above 8 severe sustainable level. So in this continuum, the lowest would be those that fall below a weightage of 40. The lower middle, that is a core subsistence level, would be the weightage between 40 and 80. Levels would be that between 80 and 120. The sustainability verse would start when it crosses 120, moving up to 160, which I call perilous sustainable, and all that above this limit would be falling in the danger zone of self-destruction or severe or suicidal sustainable levels with reference to the given social boundary. When converted in the form of index, the percent score would be divided by 20 with a nil decimal point, in which case index 0 would result up to 9%. Index 1 will be up to 29%, and index 2 would be up to 49%, and so on. So this is the index which I have given in this table. This is 1 and 2. So 2 is up to 49%. And as already pointed out, the same conditions could be subjected for a higher level comparison, adopting the percent per capita average of a phenomena, a dimension at higher levels. Thus, for assessing the livelihood indications at the ward level, we are going to the lowest administrative unit, the ward level. The person per capita average at any of the higher level, such as the panchayat, block, district, state, national, and the global level could be adopted. Now, in this index, the first exercise that we do is normalizing the family size. The family size of the household could be taken at two levels. One is the actual family size, and the second is the normalizing the family size. At the actual level, the average family size of the studied households is 4.4. I'm talking about the ward that has been adopted for the study. At the actual level, the average family size of the studied households is 4.4. Looking at the family size across BPL households and APL households, for BPL households it is 4.2, and for APL households it is 4.5 respectively. So this is the actual family size, actual average family size. When we are normalizing the family size, or weighted family size, what I call, has been evolved so that to correspond to the weighted impact of the members of a family while assessing the different aspects within the particular dimension. So now, normalizing is done by taking the average age of the entire studied population or of a particular social category into consideration, which becomes a norm for weighing the family size from its cumulative age of all the members of the family put together. Thus, even if there is a single member in a family, it could in effect amount to a weighted size of 2 members depending on the age of the individual. While in a family of 5, the weighted or normalized family size could be 4 when the cumulative age of the family is considered as against the average age of the entire unit. However, the cumulative total of the normalized or weighted family size and of the actual family size would be the same for the entire population within the given unit. So, working out like this, for the studied population that have been subjected for the present study as a whole, the average age is 35.9 years. 43% of the families have an average age below that of the entire studied population, while the rest of the families have an average age above that. Interestingly, the lowest average age among the studied families is 11 years, with an actual family size of 10. However, the normalized or weighted size of this family is only 3. Similarly, the highest average age among the studied households is 69 years, with an actual family size of 1, while the normalized weighted size of this family is 2. Looking at the normalized weighted family size of the studied population, about 1/5 of the studied households have a size of 6 and above, while about 1/4 of the households have a size of 4. A little above 1/3 of the households have a size of 3 or below, with no single member households. The average size of the families among the studied households across the BPL, APL categories separately, which are in the ratio of 41:59, turns out to be 34.3 and 37 years respectively. The lowest average age is 11 and 19, and the highest is 64 and 69 among their respective households. The normalized weighted family size of the studied population across the BPL, APL categories shows that there is only one single family above the size of 7. In the present case, it is 9 out of 41 BPL families, while in about 1/4 of the APL households, it is above 7. The normalized weighted family size of the studied population has been used as a constant value throughout the analysis to arrive at the per capita value at the level of the family in the assessment of the livelihood conditions of the households and of their access to different livelihood needs and necessities. Now, coming to the livelihood indicators and indexing procedure, this provides the indexing procedure. As mentioned above, the livelihood indicators have been identified focusing on the first 3 dimensions of the livelihood empowerment paradigm of sustainable development, namely eco-physical, economic, and eco-biological dimensions. The assessment has been made using indices corresponding to each of these dimensions and its sub-indices. Now, coming to eco-physical indices, I'll talk about the indexing procedure a little later. Before that, I'll just want to give an idea about these 3 dimensions and what are the sub-indices that have been used. Now, first dimension, eco-physical indices. Under eco-physical indices, 3 sub-indices that have been developed that included land index, water index, and housing index. The land index has been arrived at taking into consideration the land area owned by each of the households. The water index has been developed based on the source and the extent of water availability, assigning appropriate weightage. The sources of water availability have ranged from having own pipes, own wells, and tube wells, depending on neighbors' wells, and access to public taps and access to public wells separately or in combination. The extent of availability range from its severity to a medium level, condition free of any problem. Water index has been arrived at by deducting the weightage assigned to the difficulty level gauged on the basis of the extent of water availability from the weightage assigned to the source of water availability. The housing index had been developed taking into consideration the total weightage of the individual weightages assigned to aspects such as housing area, nature of the, for example, thatched, tiled, and concrete, separately or in combination, and nature of the floor like cow dung, rough cement, red oxide, tiles, chips, marble, etc., and the actual number of rooms available in the house. The composite eco-physical index had been developed through a composite index combining the weightages of all the 3 sub-indices, namely land index, water index, and housing index. Coming to the second dimension, that is economic indices. Under economic indices, various sub-indices such as consumer index, income index, expenditure index have been developed. The consumer index has been developed, assigning appropriate weightage to different material possessions, namely possessing cycle, bike, scooter, auto rickshaw, car, lorry, personal computer, laptop, mobile phone, landline telephone, mixer grinder, refrigerator, washing machine, television, cooler fan, and radio tape recorder. Each has been assigned with appropriate weightages ranging from a single point to 2 points, 4 points, 5 points, 10 points, and 30 points. Coming to the income index. Income index has been developed from the annual income of the studied households from different sources drawn by different members within each of the households. The expenditure index has been developed based on the amount spent annually on various items of daily life in each of the households. It's also possible to develop other indices such as expenditure income index, combined credit index, savings index, etc. However, for the purpose of developing the composite economic index, only the consumer index has been considered. Coming to the third dimension, that is biophysical indices. The sub-indices under the biophysical indices could include food index, health index, alcoholic index, insurance index, etc. For the purpose of the present analysis, only the food index has been adopted. The food index is based on the amount spent on food by each of the household. Another related index that could be thought of under biophysical index is the nutritional index. The health index could be conceived based on the amount spent on health in a year by a household. However, it might be appropriate that the health index also takes note of the health status of the members of the household. The alcoholic index is based on the amount spent on liquor in a year by a household. The insurance index could be based on the amount deposited for the purpose of insurance in a year by a household. Again, as in the case of economic index, for the purpose of this particular analysis, for the composite biophysical index, only the food index has been taken into consideration, though appropriate ways are to be devised and evolved for involving other indices too in developing a composite index. And finally, a comprehensive and overall composite livelihood index has been developed involving all the three composite indices, namely ecophysical index, economic index, and biophysical index. It should, however, be mentioned here that the factors that contribute to the construction of indices at whichever level could be altered depending on their effectiveness in capturing the conditions of livelihood security, which would naturally affect their corresponding positions in the livelihood continuum. Now we come to the indexing procedure. The procedure followed for developing the indices is first by arriving at a per capita weightage for each household on each of the aspects using the normalized family size, not the actual family size, but using the normalized family size. And then arriving at a percentage using the per capita weightage for the entire unit of the study. And finally, deriving the index by dividing the percentage by, as we said already, dividing it by 20. Thus, the formula, the first formula is given a slide. PCWF is equal to CWF divided by NFS. That is, the NFS stands for normalization of family size. CWF is computation, the per capita weightage of the family. And NFS is normalization of family size. The family size was normalized by dividing the cumulative age of all family members by the average age of the studied unit. So the NFS is, the formula for arriving at NFS is given as CAF divided by AAU. So the derivation of the livelihood index is the per capita weightage of each family was compared to that of the overall unit to determine the household's relative standing. So thus the livelihood index was calculated as the livelihood index of the family was calculated as per capita weightage of the family divided by per capita weightage of the unit multiplied by 100 divided by 20. As we said earlier, the LIF stands for Livelihood Index of the family for any livelihood dimension or composite index. PCWF stands for per capita weightage of the family, and PCWU implies per capita weightage of the unit. Now, this can be done through an illustration. If you take this illustration, let us consider a family of 4 members, where the head is aged 55 years, daughter aged 31 years, son-in-law aged 36 years, and the grandson aged 1 year. The total age of the family is 55 plus 31 plus 36 plus 1, total 123 years. The average age of this family comes to 123 divided by 4, that is 30.75 years. This is the actual average age of this family, which is less than the average age of the studied unit, which was 35.91 years. To determine the normalized family size, as we said already, cumulative age of family divided by average age of the unit, that is 123 is the cumulative age of the family, and 35.91 is the average age of the unit. So it comes to 3.43. Hence, the effective or normalized family size is 3.4. Not the actual family size is 4, but the weighed family size is 3.4, which is used for calculating per capita measure of all livelihood indicators. Taking the land index as an illustration, the family's total land holding, let us take as 13 cents. It is actual case I am talking about. One of the families taken into consideration, 13 cents. The average land holding of the study unit was 3.64 cents. So the per capita land holding of the family is 13 divided by 3.43. That is the weighed or normalized family size. It comes to 3.79 cents. So the livelihood index of the family is the per capita weightage of the family divided by per capita weightage of the unit multiplied by 100 divided by 20. That is 3.64 divided by 3.79 multiplied by 100 divided by 20. That is 104.2 divided by 20 comes to 5.21. Thus, this household's land index is 5.2, which falls within the optimal sustainable level. That is, 5 denotes optimum, comes under optimal sustainable level, and therefore this particular household comes under the optimal sustainable level. Now, taking the APL and BPL context, if this household belongs to so we consider this household belongs to an APL category. The average age of the APL households is 37.21 years. So the normalized family size of the APL households is 3.3. So average APL land holding is 4.26 cents. So per capita land holding of this particular family is 13 divided by 3.3 equals 3.94 cents. So the livelihood index of this family, as for the within the APL category, is 3.94 divided by 4.26 into 100 divided by 20. That is 92.49 divided by 20 equals 4.62. Therefore, at the APL subgroup level, this household's land index is 4.6, slightly below the optimal, but still within the sustainable range. So how we interpret this? The same household may fall at different levels a subsistence level or optimal level or any other level, depending on the reference unit. If you take the ward as a reference unit, the location of the particular household may be at a different level. And if you take a village as a reference unit, or block as a reference unit, or district as a reference unit, or state as a reference unit, the household's location may fall in different places. This multi-level approach helps assess relative deprivation and sustainability across scales. Similar indices can be calculated for all livelihood dimensions: economic dimension, biophysical dimension, and socio-cultural dimension, and combined a composite livelihood index for each household or group. Now, if you look at this particular table, levels of livelihood based on land index. Now, the per capita average size of the land among the studied population is 3.6 cents. The highest maximum per capita average land among the studied population is 34.7 cents in a household with the actual family size of 6, and effective or normalized family size of 8, while the lowest is of the landless with an actual and effective family size of 6, but both belonging to scheduled caste community, indicating the gap that exists even within the families of scheduled caste communities located in the same locality. If you look at the table, it has been given by community, the scheduled caste community, and there are since our sample size was 100, there were 32 SC households, 49 households belonging to a particular community called Tiya, which is a dominant community, and the rest others 19. So even among the scheduled castes, we see that there are 3 families which fall under the bare survival as far as the land index is concerned. There are, 3 plus 4, 7 under core subsistence level, and 8 plus 5, that is 13 under optimal sustainable level, and 1 plus 3 perilous sustainable, and the rest, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 falling under severe sustainable, which means that when you talk of scheduled caste community, it is not a homogeneous group. It varies from one extreme to the other. And if you take the entire ward into consideration, as far as the land index is concerned, 18% of the households fall under the bare survival level, and 22% core subsistence level, 34% optimal sustainable level, and 15% perilous sustainable, and 11% severe sustainable, which means that if you take the land index, average land index of the ward, about 40% of the households fall below the optimal sustainable level, and about 26% fall above the optimal sustainable, that is perilous sustainable and severe sustainable levels. So it shows the range of households and their livelihood levels, livelihood security levels. Coming to the levels of livelihood based on water index by community, again, it has been on the basis of the community. If you look at the scheduled caste community, there are 14 scheduled caste households out of 32 households falling under the bare survival level, and 3 households under the core subsistence level, and only 2 households on the optimal sustainable level, and 10 households perilous sustainable, and 3 households severe sustainable. Again, you see there is a range of, now if you look at the water index, as far as the SC households are concerned, the index varies from 1 to 9. As for the Tiya households, again, 16 households and the bare survival, whereas severe sustainable there are 2 households, and the others there are no severe sustainable, but then bare survival there are 6 households. If you take the entire ward into consideration, as far as the water index is concerned, there are 36% of households, that is 36% of households fall under the bare survival level of livelihood security, and 5% in the severe sustainable level, and only 9% fall under the optimal sustainable. So if you add 36 plus 9, 45% fall below optimal sustainable, and 46% fall above optimal sustainable. Coming to the level of livelihood based on the housing index, again, among the SC households, 1 household falls under the bare survival. Optimal sustainable, 9 households, but severe sustainable, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 households fall under the severe sustainable levels. Again, this shows how the households are varying in their livelihood security, and definitely bringing out the point that they are not a homogeneous group. And for the entire ward, taking the entire ward into consideration, about 41% of the households fall below the optimal sustainable level, whereas 32% fall above the optimal sustainable level, only 27% in the optimal sustainable level. So coming to the composite eco-physical index, all put together, water index, house index, and land index together, as far as the entire ward is concerned, 8% of the households, that is 8 households, fall under bare survival, and 37 households fall under core subsistence. 38 households fall under optimal sustainable level, that is closer to the average. When you say optimal sustainable, they fall under the closer to the average livelihood level of that particular ward, because we have taken the ward as a standard index. And 14% under the perilous sustainable, and 3% severe sustainable. Coming to the eco-physical index and its components, taking all together, land index, water index, housing index, and the eco-physical index. And in bare survival, as far as land index is concerned, it is 18%, whereas water index, it is 35%, which means that water is the severest problem in the ward, where 35% of the households are in the bare survival level. As for the core subsistence, it is again, in land index is 22, housing index is 37, water index is 9. Optimal index, land index is the highest, whereas water index, perilous sustainable is highest, and under housing index, it is a core subsistence which is highest. Taking all together, 38% of households fall under the optimal sustainable level, and the 45% below optimal, and 17% above optimal levels. Coming to the economic index, economic dimension, again, the entire ward, taking the entire ward into consideration, 24% of the households, or 24 households out of 100 households, fall under the bare survival. 32 households fall under core subsistence level, and 19% fall under optimal sustainable level, and 25 households, that is 25% of the households, fall above the optimal sustainable level. Now, the graph provides a picture of consumer economic index, across the communities. Coming to the income index across community, again, only 8% in the optimal sustainable level. But then below optimal sustainable level, as far as the income index is concerned, almost 70% of the households fall below the optimal sustainable level, and 23% fall above the optimal sustainable level. The expenditure index, if you take into consideration, 14% fall under bare survival, 36% core subsistence, and 23%, about 1/4 of the entire number of households, fall under the optimal sustainable level, and 27% above the optimal sustainable level. Coming to the food index by community, again, severe sustainable level, the scheduled caste communities, there are about 5 out of 30 SC households fall under severe sustainable. At the same time, there are 30 households which fall under bare survival. So out of 13 households in the ward which fall in the bare survival level, 3 households are from the scheduled caste community, but out of 32, 4 households out of 49 of TIA households, and 6 households out of 19 others fall under the bare survival. Again, if you take the optimal sustainable 37%, about 38% fall below the optimal sustainable, and 25% above the optimal sustainable level. This is food expenditure across the community. So composite livelihood index by levels of livelihood and community, this provides all 3 dimensions put together. What is the level of livelihood of these households? Again, if you look at the table, in the scheduled caste community, 3 households fall under bare survival, but then 3 households also fall under the severe sustainable, and 9 households out of 32 fall under the optimal sustainable level. If you take the entire ward into consideration, 31, about 1/3 of the number of households fall under the optimal sustainable level, but then 40, almost 50, 1/2 of the number of households fall under or below the optimal sustainable level, and 19% fall under the above optimal sustainable level. So this radar provides the composite livelihood index and its 3 components. And if you look at this, eco-physical index, core subsistence is dominating here, whereas economic index, bare survival is dominating, and biophysical index, optimal sustainable level is dominating. It provides a comprehensive picture of the entire ward as with regard to the composite livelihood index and its 3 components. This is the graph. So composite livelihood index by levels of livelihood and poverty lines. If you take the BPL and APL, interestingly, you see when you say BPL, it is just based on a particular, below poverty line, we have a line and consider the line as the border where the people are divided by BPL and APL. But then even among the BPL households in the ward, though there are no severe sustainable level, there are 2 BPL households who are above optimal levels. But then if you take the APL households, there are 3 APL households who are under bare survival level. So these indicators that the categorization of BPL and APL is not really sound to for policy level implementation of programs. We need to go deeper into it and find out the varying levels of livelihood security so that we'll be able to identify which are the households that fall under the bare survival level and which are the households at different levels of livelihood, so that we will be optimizing the sustainable livelihood level to a maximum extent. This is again, along the line of eco-physical index, economic index, and biophysical index, and the composite livelihood index among the BPL households. So if you take the BPL households alone into consideration, there are 41 BPL households, but then there is only one household which is bare survival, whereas households are in severe sustainable level and 17 households are optimal sustainable level. So when we talk of BPL, again, it is not a homogeneous group. They also vary along the lines. So this provides a comprehensive picture of how the levels of livelihood can be understood at different levels. It may be in the ward level, it may be at the panchayat level, it may be at the higher district level or state level. But they would provide an indicator of where a particular household really, really is located, so that a direct application of program can be taken up for consideration. So to conclude, the assessment of livelihood security along different dimensions using appropriate indices have proved to be a useful tool in understanding the ground level realities in its naked manifestation. The analysis has shown that given the appropriate and reliable data, that is very important, the livelihood analysis as carried out here could be done, which would help in turn to understand the existing conditions in a comprehensive manner. Such an assessment also provides space for understanding the deprivational and conglomerational dimensions of livelihood, at least to a certain extent. The most important element in such an analysis is the scope that such indices could be used at different levels and have a comparative and relative dimensions of reality. Moreover, the study has also helped in evolving a viable methodology and procedure towards formulating the indices, placing the reality in a continuum. It further manifests the extent of dispersion and of concentration of the resources that are at the disposal of a particular unit, and need for sharing the resources in a responsible and cooperative manner at every level of the unitary existence. Nevertheless, it should be noted that the indices are not finite, but only a beginning towards evolving better indices in effectively, sustainably dealing with the livelihood issues for the benefit of the humankind for now and for future. The BCOP's levels of livelihood paradigm could be appropriately applied at the macro global state of human livelihood, and particularly with the value measure that represents what is desirable or optimal level of livelihood. Only in such cases one can really talk of perilous and sustainable and suicidal sustainable levels of livelihood. Even in the present study, the suicidal level has been used as severe sustainable, because what is even at the severe sustainable level at the local setting might even turn out to be at the core subsistence level at a macro level. Hence, these levels should be understood only to the extent that such households are relatively at a higher level and could be utilizing the resources at a severe level as compared to the other households within a similar setting, and pointing out the responsibility such households have towards their lesser brethren in a collective livelihood system. In this way, while doing analysis at the micro level and even at the national level within the context of developing countries, one could think of the levels of livelihood in a little more flexible manner and talk of BCATS levels of livelihood, in which bare survival, core subsistence, average sustainable, threshold sustainable, satisfactory sustainable levels are identified corresponding to the earlier BCOPS levels. The only exception would be that when it crosses the 10-point level, which would normally represent the doubling status of their average level within the given setting, then it could be considered as beyond BCATS level, which could be perilous or severe or even suicidal. In this way, the present indicators of the levels of livelihood would only represent a beginning towards further refinement and evolving better indicators. Nevertheless, the present analysis definitely could pave the way for rethinking policy orientation, for instance, determining the poverty line and identifying the desired areas of development interventions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Gregory, for an excellent presentation, very insightful and very detailed. In fact, you started with defining livelihoods and debates over the concept of development and how to measure livelihood framework, which you have given very clearly with six-fold dimension using capability paradigms and empowerment paradigm. Looking at these six-fold dimensions, both independently and compositely, I think the index was very detailed and given us a lot of insights to look into the households. I also wanted to add on probably some of the literature which we also have read about feminization of poverty. When you look at gender dimension, a lot of families which are single women headed, they are pushed below poverty line. And one or two more points in the sense when you look at the more number of earning members in the family, especially the men, the household income goes up. And the intergenerational accumulation of wealth also add to the household livelihood security. I think very, very important issues have come up in the lecture. I'm sure all the participants and scholars who have attended the lecture have gained a lot from your excellent lecture. Thank you so much, Professor Gregory. Would like to open it for discussion and comments. We already have few comments from our participants, but we'll be happy to have more. Please unmute and share your comments and thoughts for today's lecture. Thank you so much, Professor Gregory.
Thank you.
Can I?
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. First of all, my salutation to Gregory. What an exercise. Such a difficult, it was not easy. It was not easy. But I must submit, it requires a better orientation of our own basics to understand. And I also wish if we can make it simpler so that the one who is doing fieldwork on livelihood can make use of it. And some clarification. It may not be possible to explain here, but some clarification. How do you have used this term that sustainability, limited resilience? So how do we consider limited resilience or good resilience or resilience even for the socially unsustainable? So it may not be a good time because it requires an orientation. We need orientation, Gregory, really.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's not like a kind of a talk. We need orientation. And Sunita, if we can make Gregory and experts to have basic understanding of what is social resilience? Very fundamental. These are fundamental of anthropology.
Yes.
Understanding resilience, understanding sustainability of the social. How do you know? So these three things are very fundamental. Unless we understand the basics of sustainability, basics of resilience, basics of social sustainability is so important. I think it should be a part of the course also, those who are working for the field work, because these days each discipline is getting enriched. I repeat, each discipline is getting enriched. So our anthropology discipline will get enriched if we add these important issues to be discussed. I'll add one thing and close my observation. DSC, Department of Science and Technology, last year has announced project on ecological resilience and social resilience. During presentation, I was remembering each bit of that. And out of more than 400 proposals, hardly 5 or 6 were from the anthropology. Mostly it was from the economics or technologies also. So what I wanted to emphasize here with this presentation, we need to enrich ourselves. We need to learn the basics. And unless we know the basics, we can't grasp this presentation. I submit. We must know the basics of that. This is my request. If Anthropology India Foundation can organize capsule courses to make our scholar more professional, which can be compared with others. If I ask somebody out of 10 villages, which village is more resilient? So how do you consider? Yeah. And thank you so much. I have mentioned how much professional time it has gone behind it. Because until now, we are using only 5 capital. Physical capital, social capital, natural capital, ecological capital, the 5 capital for the DFID framework, livelihood framework. But now it's so much. But I need orientation, very simple. I submit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Roy sir. In fact, I'll just quickly talk about one of the fieldwork experience I had in Andaman Nicobar Islands. These resilience
Oh, yeah,
which
you
was
are doing,
undermined.
yeah.
It was undermined by
Yeah, it
taking
had
away
been,
the
yeah.
opportunity for microfinance and the livestock rearing which women were doing. And the intervention from the government actually undermined that, and they lost all this which was there before tsunami. So I know and the kind of interventions we have which are top down basically undermine the resilience of people. Yeah, thank you so much, Roy sir, for your comment and also suggestion for AIF. I would like to request Neeta Mawar ji and then Rachna to share their comments. Neeta Mawar ji, please unmute. Yeah.
Good evening. Wonderful presentation, Dr. Gregory. You brought in lots and lots of issues. I've already given some of my points over there. My concern was, wonderful presentation, lot of data and lot of good indices to be used for any kind of a understanding of a development program. These could all be used together or even at least 2, 3, which could definitely be analyzed because people may be having this kind of a data for doing the presentation. And the diagram that come out with it also substantiated further. So I think that looks very nice and very useful. One of the concern that I have, and probably you as an anthropologist and we all as anthropologists could answer, is when we are doing this kind of an analysis, ultimately you talked about an intervention, sustainable development. At one point, it is okay to understand this in terms of communities. But when we are doing a development program, we cannot isolate all these communities separately. As an academic understanding, it's good to understand the differences. But when we are doing a development program, the communities may not be isolated. It has to be an intervention for the community. How would you then be able to assess? What would be the parameters that we would use? So somehow out of these, I'm sure when we do a still more rigorous statistical analysis, some will come out that these are the ones which will be regardless of the community that they're in, because development as a whole is for the community, right? Some of these are environmental. So that was one of my concern. And then when you talked about, you talked about the 6 development matters. One was social, political, and other empowerment, and the other was the physical environment. So the physical environment would be taken care of. The other 3, what kind of interventions would be there? So, 2, 3 issues that really would concern me is, one is the ethical issues. When we are giving it to the community, can we isolate this and not the others? Because there were problems which were there across all the 3 communities when you showed the analysis as a overall, because some were coming as red, it was seen in all the communities, whether it is at whatever level they were. So those few questions concern me, and how are we going to really tackle it when we come to interventions? And of course, I find that these indices, when we are doing sustainable development over a period of time, we have to measure these over a period of time. So these could be wonderful indicators as a part of the process also. So how can we see across the whole community as such? And why do we want to differentiate according to communities? Because some things that really concern me is, as applied anthropologist probably, why do you want to differentiate it to that level? And maybe some of these answers we can get through qualitative data also. So some of my concerns, but it was a wonderful presentation with all these indices, because quite often anthropologists are labeled as only qualitative researchers with no data. But this evidence, when we show it and we do a rigorous analysis, we can really show quite a lot, and it makes a difference. Because when indices are presented, it makes a lot of difference. Thank you very much for your lovely presentation. So those are my concerns, and I'm sure you'll be able to answer them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neeta Mawar. In fact, as I have already mentioned, these indices are only, preliminary. We need to, as Professor Roy also knows, we need to refine it, evolve it to a better index, creation of a better index. But the only thing what I focused here is that there is no homogeneous group. The range varies. So we need to identify, for example, in the decentralized program, as Kerala has been very, in the forefront. In fact, on 1st November, Kerala is going to announce that there is, there are no severe poverty households in Kerala, first state in India. They are going to announce on 1st November that it's free from severe poverty households. So see,
this is great.
Decentralized program, how Kerala becomes different, because they allocate 40% of the planning amount directly to the local governance, and therefore there are several programs which they require to identify the beneficiaries. Not necessarily. For the academic sake, we set across the communities. Not necessarily across communities. We need to identify those who are really in need of the support, so that they will be elevated to a higher level. And the understanding is that this world where we were thinking that development is always going higher and higher and higher. But what I am saying now is that we have to come to the center, balance it. Not going higher and higher is development. So we have to target the optimal sustainable level. So that should be the target.
Thank you, Neeta ma'am, and thank you, Gregory sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rachna, would you like to ask your question? Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry I joined in late, but what I would like to know, Gregory sir, is that household indices. can there be a baseline against which we come up with indices which can be then worked across India in small batches, like the what Royce has said, these terminologies, the sustainability or the livability of the area, those may affect the indices and probably a set or uh, maybe I think I'll go back to the ma'am. We'll be having the recording of the lecture, full lecture.
Yes, it'll be in the on YouTube later here.
Um, so, actually, where I'm coming from is that I was thinking of looking at how the public infrastructure over a time period may have developed in smaller towns. I'm in Delhi, so in NCR, and how the livability of those cities, the people, and again, various segments and the household, their precarity living in Delhi vis-a-vis, or let me put it, living in a metropolitan vis-a-vis, less precariousness of the urban life, yet resilience of, and I'm using these terms very much in quotes because there has to be something which is comparable so that we may know, like you said about Kerala being would be showcasing that there are no household in extreme poverty. So, there would be something in Kerala's public infrastructure which may make a geographical area more sustainable than maybe Chennai or other places. An issue may be water, maybe one. I'm sorry, I may sound dense, but as I heard, I felt that what Gregory sirs had said. Uh, Whatever little I heard, I felt that when I as when I am thinking of a multidisciplinary study, it may make it very understandable as to what those smaller areas have to offer vis-a-vis the maybe bigger towns, you know.
Yeah, thank
That's
you
it.
so
Thank
much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. No, you are right. It is very much contextual. And even the indices, indices, what sub-indices you require and what are the components that make the index. That is very contextual. It may vary from place to place. That's why I said that it is only relative. You can only talk relatively, not absolutely. And if you have to have an absolute standard index, standard optimal index, then you have to take into consideration, as I said, that carrying capacity. What is resilience? What really makes the resilient or sustainable livelihood? That you need to define and develop. It may take time. So it is, see, as I said, this study was confined to a particular ward. So the optimal index, optimal standard index was taken, the average of the ward level. But if you take the ward as a unit instead of household, we can compare the ward with other wards within the panchayat. So it will have nearly each panchayat can have a index which can be compared with other panchayats in a larger district level. So I think that has to be, you need to have a raw data first of all, and you need to decide which are the real components that really make each index possible. So I mean, it's not, I mean, I just throw certain ideas, but we need to develop and evolve so that, I mean, also we need to look into the qualitative side of the data.
Thank you so much, Rachna ji. And Vasundhara, would you like to unmute and share your query?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to Dr. Gregory. Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk. My point is sort of an extension to what Rachna ma'am has already mentioned when we are trying to understand how these livelihood frameworks can be applied to bigger areas. So when I say bigger areas, because my reality is an urban setting, so I would like to take it to the urban setting itself. I understand definitely that the framework in itself is highly contextual and we can definitely change the parameters. But I was wondering that because there has been a lot of research recently that a lot of India's economic and GDP growth today depends on debts. There's a huge surge of debts and credits being taken left and right by youngsters and even by people who find themselves in a blunder and they just take quick and easy loans, which takes them and puts them in a state of perpetual debt in many a times. So can we deploy at some point, can we take and deploy this framework in an urban setting and try to understand like why is it happening, why India as a country, we are however we are claiming that our GDP is growing, but we are sort of basing it on the basis of this credits and financial debts, which is not a step in the right direction in my perspective. So I would like to know Dr. Gregory's thoughts on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vasundhara. I mean, you are absolutely right. I mean, we need to take into consideration the kind of parameters that is very contextual in nature. And see, for example, even GDP per capita for India, if you take, it will give a very positive picture.
Yes.
But if you go to the ground level reality, that you will see the extreme, the other side of the picture.
Definitely.
So I think many times it depends on what are the components that make the picture that we project. So that has to be seriously taken into consideration, and that's where I said, even the BPL, APL households,
yes,
it's not scientifically based.
Yes, definitely.
Not just one line that makes one APL and one PPL. Or even today, when we talk about the affirmative action and the scheduled caste communities, or scheduled tribe communities, the entire scheduled tribe in India do not form a single homogeneous group.
Yes.
There's a lot of variations, one extreme to the other. So we need to take into consideration when we frame policies and programs for the people. So that has to be contextually based. And that's where the anthropological input becomes very essential.
Thanks a lot, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Vasundhara. Yes, sir. Roy, sir, you have something to say?
Yeah, very interesting point. I remember after listening to this participant, 10 years back, we were given assignment by SEBI to evaluate the impact of MFI in 300 villages in India. And what I'm going to share, very interesting thing, that after our study, when we presented the data before the village, that so many households, they are better off because we find physical asset, refrigerator, though just cycle, stove and refrigerator was a very big thing in the village. So they were classified as a very super. Some land with a bigger size of land, someone with a vehicle, so they were classified affluent. And the villagers laughed at that. I said, why you are laughing? But they are poor. This fridge and other things, they have taken loan from the Bandhan Bank. So they are under loan. And the bigger land, this remain barren throughout the year, full of rock. So they have to spend money in protection. They don't get ill. And the car, he can't drive. So he has to pay EMI those days and unable to save. So don't make assessment by looking in the physical asset. You have to see the production out of that. So I'm just saying, when we survey, immediately fill up physical material in the household and the body, the size of the land, area of the land, landless, and they laugh. Some of the landless are better off because they are getting some money and they have got a shop of that and working every day in somebody's house. So this is the perception of land, size, and physical thing here. So it's a very interesting experience. We learned the perception of the people, reality, and what we are told to fill up the form about the physical asset, land, and vehicle as affluent in the village. So I said, remember the perception and reality. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing an emic perspective. It's so important. And now we have again Neetaji and Rachnaji. If we can be brief so that we can go ahead for dinner. Yeah,
Yeah.
Neetaji.
Okay. Thank you for giving me another chance to talk. The question, my question remains the same. When we are doing these kind of analysis of the data, I would again like to reiterate from the methodological point of view for sustainable development. You have used very useful quantitative data for analysis of these indices, which we will have it at the baseline. And maybe, if the program is for 3 years, that time again we do a study and then see the indices, how they change. And then again, maybe 5 years, you will again see it as a process indicators to see what changes are happening. Why do we want to differentiate in terms of community? As I said, for academic analysis is fine, but wouldn't the qualitative data help us much more? I mean, you could say much more to say, how would that be there? Because ultimately the program that are being given, it is not just for a specific community, but overall in terms of the area that is being given. Or is it given according to the community? I'm not clear. So if that is different, we know that probably we can highlight that kind of a thing. So primarily from the methodological point of view. That's my concern. And because ultimately it helps us to understand from the ethical perspectives whether this community is to be given or not. So maybe you would have your experiences to share. Thank you. Your presentation was wonderful and there's a lot to learn how we can use these indices to make a presentation and a very good presentation. Very comprehensive study. I've already given my comments. So just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you so
Sunita.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neeta. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Rachna? Rachna ji, are you there?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you so much for the chance, ma'am. I would like to say what Roy sir said, and when I'd heard Gregory sir, again, the thing was that, in and I'll speak in reference to the R&R schemes which we have had, and three geographies. I would talk of Gurgaon, this Noida, and the third and more recent is Renuka Dam area. Now, what the livability, the precariousness of the communities, I mean, and what Royce said, these people out of the compensation they got, they have household things, yet they are they the future, resilience and the future prospects, the erosion, the social capital, how in terms of on a long span, probably those also can be indices. And again, comparability of the regions, existing, what are the existing norms on this, uh, uh, and and probably one of the things that may be pan India can be the access to public services. Maybe one of the benchmarks. I don't know. Am I being understandable? It's against things which I would have seen and thought of. I'm trying to put what Gregory sir's idea of indices is. Sir, may I understand from you?
Now, what I would say is that nothing is finite. We need to evolve, and we need to identify. Contextually, it may differ. So we need to put our minds together. What constitutes a particular index? There are 7 sub-indices, which you can take into note of. I mean, even what Dr. Nita Mawar was telling, we need to also supplement doing this quantitative analysis. We need to supplement it with the qualitative data. And the situation context may vary, so that we need to identify in the particular context which is, as Rai put it, not merely the owning of a car or land makes a difference, but how it is put into use, what is the kind of accessibility. So you need to find other components or sub indices, what I mean. So when we talk about, for example, biophysical index or economic index, we need to also take into consideration, for example, I talked about credit index. That is very important. And health index, nutritional index. So you need to, you need to take into all these indices, which are particularly, you need to collect this from the people whom we are interacting. They should decide what indices make them, contribute to their welfare or poverty. So those indices we need to identify and develop a composite index. And it can only be used as a relative measurement, not an absolute measurement. But then it is
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Actually, this is a very debatable topic across the world. Economists, anthropologists, everybody has been debating how to measure poverty line and $1 a day. So I think this debate still going on, but I think we are refining day by day, more and more, adding more and more indices. I think that's very important. And of course, qualitative data gives so much insights. The quantitative data also are very important. And really, we all enjoyed your lecture, sir, today. And I really thank all the senior colleagues who have joined today. Thank you, Roy, sir. Your always comments are very, very, insightful. And equally, Neeta Mawarji. We had others. Shalina ma'am had joined. Professor Amita Pandey ji has joined. Arvind sir and Walimbe sir. And there are many other young scholars who have joined. I am really glad that all of you were there for the evening today. Thank you so much. And I would like to really thank my team, Sabha, for coordinating, and Aryan and Habiba and Sukanya and many others who are behind the scene, helping us to organize these events. Thank you so much. And we would be looking forward to meeting you all. As you all know, we have Anthropologist of the Month. So Professor Gregory will be featuring in our Anthro Bulletin this month. And this lecture will be on YouTube. So you can very well go back. Someone wanted to know the indices, so you can go back and listen to the lecture once again. It will be available, and you're most welcome to see our digital magazine, Childhood Matters, and share your thoughts and feedback. Looking forward to meet again. Thank you so much, and Good night, and we all meet again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Wonderful
Professor.
session. Very
Thank
good
you.
session.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gregory, sir. We'll keep
Thank